Okay, yesterday, rather last session, we were discussing, we had a lengthy introduction and we went through basically the tour on the idea of how far is one allowed to travel before Shabbos. And we basically discussed, we're going to get a recap because it was already before last Shabbos, it was already 3 days ago, that we learned from the tour that a person is not allowed to walk more than a distance of 12 miles to his destination on Shabbos. If he's going to a destination. If a guy's exercising, there are plenty of people who run 10 miles every single day. That's one thing. We're going to discuss about exercising before Shabbos and the Siman as well in the upcoming days, or perhaps today or tomorrow. So the idea over here is that you're not allowed to walk more than 12 miles. And the main reason is that you want to make sure that you get to your destination before Shabbos starts. Number one. Number two is that the food for Shabbos could be properly prepared. Hmm. This is obviously discussing a situation in which the food was not prepared yet. We discussed the Bach last time over here, who said that this is specifically referring to walking on your feet. However, if you're going on a horse or a carriage, the custom is to be lenient, and then he says it's better that people should accidentally violate this halacha than purposely violate it. Nevertheless, he says a person needs to be careful to leave some time before he reaches his destination in order that he could come to his house before Shabbos begins, because many times people stumble with this, that they desecrate Shabbos and they don't make it in time to the destination before Shabbos, and then they'll actually violate Shabbos by traveling. That's basically what we did last time in summary in around 60 seconds, with a lot of other details, of course. So, the source of this is the Gemara in Suka. The Gemara in Suka on Mem Dalid, over here, opens up and says that where the highlighted is, right over here. Right over here. It says, Amar Aibo Mishum Rabbi Eliezer Bar Tzadik. Al Yahalich Adam Barvi Shabbos Yomer Gimel Parsos. The person is not allowed to walk more than 3 miles on the eve of Shabbos. Rav Kahana says, Lo Amar Mel Avesi, there's only talking about to your house about Lo Shviza Madinakat Samach. Whatever you're holding in your hand, you could rely on. What does that mean? Rashi over here says, you shouldn't go, rather you should stop when it's still day. You should prepare for the Suda of Shabbos. Rashi says that this is talking about when you go to your house. They don't know that you're going to come, and they're therefore not going to prepare for you accordingly, and then he's going to get upset when he's going to come home and there's no food. However, if you're going to someone else, if you're getting hosted and you're going somewhere else, that's a different story. You're going to carry food with you and you're going to rely on that which is in your hand. In other words, we see that the Gemara is differentiating between if the food was prepared or not. However, the Gemara says, then quotes Rav Kahana who says in a different, on an Ikadamri, there are those that say Rav Kahana says, no, even to your house.
I'm just confused. Who's preparing food? Is it your host?
Who's what?
Who's preparing food?
That's the point.
I'm saying, is it your house or your host?
That's the point. If it's your house, so you're going to go home and then you're going to come home unexpectedly, they wouldn't have thought that you're going to be there and there's not going to be enough food.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're going to get very upset. Where's the food? It's going to cause a whole tumult in the house. It's going to hold now a ruckus.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a major issue. However, if you're going to your host, it seems like back then people was bring your own food situation. So therefore, you wouldn't need to leave as much time when you're going to your host. But then the Gemara quotes Rav Kahana and says, no, some say even to your house.
Even to your house that.
Even to your house, look at Rashi. Afilu beisei demasha moitzi ma'atim rav shalahu. Afapikim lo yahal v'kol shekein l'ushviza shelo yimsa klum. No. The idea is even to your house. In other words, that which you are taking with you, whether it's a lot or a little, even so, don't go. Don't go. And certainly this applies to your host. You're not going to find anything. In other words, according to the second version, it applies to both cases. Number one, you're going to show up surprisingly to your house. They're not going to have enough food for you. Certainly, if you're going to someone else and he's going to host you, he's not going to have enough food for you. Then the Gemara concludes by quoting Rav Kahana yet again, who says, guess what? Bididei havi uvda. There's a story, similar story with me. This happened to me. I traveled. I got to my house right before Shabbos. They weren't expecting me. If you look harsa the harsana lo yeshkichi. They didn't even have fried fish. For me, they had nothing. Rashi says, small meal. Suda mu'etes dogim ketanim mitugonim mekemech. You got fish which are fried in flour. B'shuman shalahim. Didn't even have that for me. So we clearly see over here this idea of a major aspect of traveling before Shabbos, according to the Gemara, is not necessarily that you're going to make it on time for Shabbos. It's the food preparations that we're concerned about, which is something very interesting that we see from the Gemara. That the food preparations. There's a very interesting Gemara in Pesachim on this topic. We're talking that you're not allowed to go more than 3 parsaos, which is 12 miles, because each parsa has 4 mil in it, 4 miles. Yeah? Look at this Gemara in Pesachim on Sadi Dalar Amud Aleph. Quick Gemara, interesting food for thought. The Gemara over here says, Amar Rabba bar Rav Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Which is the average person? How much could he walk a day? Yud parsaos. Says the Gemara, he could walk 40 miles. Just the average person, how much he could walk in a day? From dawn until sunrise.
Wait, I thought parsa is 2,000 feet.
Think again. 1 parsa is 4 mil. Do your homework. Get
Wait,
back
how-
to this. 1
Wait,
mil
that's-
is around a mile. You know what 4 times 10 is?
1 mil is around
You know what 4 times 10 is?
5,
4 times 10.
12,
Are you messing with us?
maybe.
Okay, yeah.
This is live.
40.
All right,
Yeah. Where's your face, by the way? What are you hiding behind there?
right here.
Okay, I thought you were wearing a mask with COVID. Okay. So what do you have over here? So you have over here 40 miles.
Wow.
Yeah. So you could walk from Borough Park to Farakwe over here to attend what we're doing. Because it's
It's
less
not-
than 40 miles.
Not so far though.
Not that far. What is it? 14 miles?
Probably less. I think less
Yeah, so
What's the
so you should walk here.
with the
So he says like this.
over the marine.
Now,
that
that
bridge.
So from dawn until sunrise,
5 mil.
so you could walk 5 miles already. Think about what does the average person do, from like 4 o'clock in the morning until 4:45.
I can tell you what I do.
You see what you could accomplish from 4 in the morning to 5 in the morning? You could already walk 5 miles. Look at what you could do. Your day's already wasted. You're waking up at 5. Mishkia Zacham from sunset to when 3 stars come out. Another 5. So 5 plus 5 is what?
10, and then they have 30 for the rest of
I
the
was
day.
I was asking David.
Oh, sorry.
I was trying to get him to
5 plus 5 is 10. And then,
okay, great. Nimsa Ovyev Shel Rakia Echad Meshisha B'Yoyim. Oh no, okay, that's going on the previous Gemara. And then the rest of the day you walk 30. So 30 plus 5 plus 5 is 40 miles.
well,
That's what you do. Okay?
You're doing
Yeah. In between sunrise and sunset, you're doing 30.
so it sounds like you're doing much more in the beginning and the end.
Not necessarily.
Well,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, maybe. Yeah. It could be also if it's hot during the day, you need to rest. Maybe with the 30 miles is
Davening.
longer. So yeah, you gotta dive
Maybe
in.
that's why I took Nates.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
that's
yeah.
the Nates, and then I don't know.
Could be.
It's all
The
walking.
question is if this guy is walking before sunrise, why is he doing that? Then he's missing Vasikin. All right, something else to think about.
Maybe you're allowed to exercise before Nates.
Simon Pei Shaila.
I understand,
Yeah,
but
let's do
I know there's more involved. I'm just saying this Gemara's
That's simple.
mashma.
Before dawn, you could definitely. Before dawn. Yeah. The classic Shaila is it's the only time I get exercise. Yeah, okay. Daven first. Okay, that's the Torah. Let's jump right into the Shulchan Aruch over here. It's going to be some good stuff. Shulchan Aruch says, "Ein hoichem be'erev Shabbos yoisim mishalosh v'sos." Not allowed to walk more than 12 miles on the eve of Shabbos. Kadei shegila b'ezav yodiyam gadol, in order that you could reach home when it's still day. V'yuchel hachin tzarchi. So the Shabbos you can prepare for the necessities of the Shabbos meal. This applies bein shalach l'bayzachin, bein shalach l'bayis, so whether you're going to someone else's house or whether you're going to your own house. Funny Mila is talking about kishehu b'yishuv makom sheyuchel hachin tzarchi Shabbos. It's talking about you're in an area where you're able to prepare a calm area, you're able to prepare for the necessities of Shabbos. But if the place where you are, it's impossible for you to prepare for the needs of Shabbos. So then already that's a different story. But if it's a place that where you are, it's impossible for you to prepare for the needs of Shabbos, or if it's a place that is not so secure, exactly. You're allowed to walk even more miles before Shabbos, many miles. If you send word and inform them that you're going over there on Shabbos, you're allowed to even walk even more. So in other words, we're going to see that there's basically going to be 3 or 4 main reasons why there's a problem of traveling too much out of Shabbos, and we're going to learn about all the details, of course. One of the reasons is, and we see the main reason is, you're going to show up, there's not going to be ample food. So accordingly, if you're going to inform them now that you are going, so then it's fine. If you're going to let them know that you're going to that destination, that it's fine.
The tour maybe wasn't around during his time at Tony Express or something like that.
No, he would agree.
He didn't mention anything about it.
No, but he would agree.
Okay.
It's the source of this. Beis Yosef brings it. It's based on a Rambam. Yeah, you didn't bring it, okay. So this certainly applies nowadays where we have phones. So,
and also the whole concept of bringing your own food is a little foreign to us because whenever we're going somewhere, people have food for us.
Okay, so that's why it's important to learn how we're learning everything. Because the concept, the logic, the svara over here of the food applies, which means we might not bring your own food. But what we're going to see brought down is if you're going to a location and now you could just buy the food in the supermarket or something, that's something else. Number one. Number two is that back then it was a much longer process to get food ready.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays it's quicker. So that is another factor to contend with, which would change this halacha. And we're going to see everything that I'm saying is brought down. I'm not making this stuff up and trying to twist and distort logic over here and what the Torah wants of us. That is going to be the actual halacha. We're going to see it's brought down. So all that's going to apply. We have cell phones nowadays. So really what it boils down to at the bottom line is how much time is the person obligated to leave to get to his destination so that he won't violate Shabbos. That's really what's going to come down to. The food is usually the problem.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see there's going to be a major other factor that's going to be involved as well. Magen Avram says in the Aleph, Dimu Yoishe be'agala yachal elech yoisem mikol makom, yizar sheyeh or yachal lehagia be'odiyam gadol. What this is saying over here is that if a guy over here is sitting in a wagon, this is the Bach that we just saw. You could go more than 12 miles. But make sure you get there before Shabbos starts. The next Magen Avram says, by the way, you should know, in our countries, people, we don't cook exact amount. You got a family of 6. So now you're going to have 6 pieces of chicken We don't do that. We cook extra.
Mhm.
So therefore, since we cook extra, you don't need to worry about this anymore. Because let's say someone does show up last minute, it's fine.
I had a
You're gonna
case
have
once where I
extra
showed
food.
last minute because didn't cook extra, but
That's rare.
I mean it's rare, is it? But I'm saying the
Where,
question
where,
is,
where, where was it?
also what happened was I was
Where?
oh, it was in Manhattan.
Yeah, that's rare. The Magen Avram is quoting the
So it was a
Aguda.
single guy. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Magen Avram is quoting the Aguda who says that most times people prepare. Oh, you went to a single guy.
Yeah, just single guy.
Yeah.
So I was on the way someplace else and I got stuck and I
Most-
didn't get there in time.
most-
Then I went to this guy's at Plan B and it was very nice. It took me, but he didn't have anything extra.
Most people, they have families.
Yeah.
And families is enough. I remember my grandfather once told me, he used to say, when they would have guests last minute, it used to be, that's 80 years ago. Nowadays, we don't have it as much, but it used to be more common. There would be guests last minute who needed a place to stay and whatever. Apparently, it's not a common thing nowadays. There's just so much hospitality and chesed, hachnasas orchim, and it's all planned in advance, a nice place to stay, and this and that. So he used to say, his mother would always say, or no problem, you just water the soup down a little. It's like, check. But the idea over here is that, what this is saying over here is, look, most people, when they got a family of six, they don't just have 6 pieces of chicken. You got extra. And therefore, this whole idea, this whole Gemara is basically out the window, essentially. Doesn't apply. Most places.
People who are living.
Okay, yeah.
I could say also based on their standards, like might be that they need a lot more and maybe they don't have enough for the people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they have a ton, but it's not they used to having a ton.
Yeah.
So I know what that means.
There's a Pri Megadim over here. He alludes to something which is a major concept, which we're going to get into. This is going to be really reason 3 for this halacha. Shiny hoilich beraglav deshem ye'ayif yimshach harbe. What's the difference? What's the explanation of this bach? Last time we spent a lot of time, I said a lot of things, balpeh, outside. Sources that I already learned because I already finished everything on the sif. I went through it beforehand. Very good sif, very applicable, very relevant. Why over here is the Bach differentiating between if a person is walking as a pedestrian, in which case that's what the Gemara is referring to when it says don't go more than 12 miles, versus if you're on a horse, if you're on a carriage, if you're on a vehicle, a car, a train, all this. We're going to learn about planes, all these things. That's the difference. The answer is when you're going by foot, that requires more energy than anything else. And it will take more time. You might be tired and it will take more time. You see the Bach over here is alluding to something which we're going to see is actually, if I'm not mistaken, brought down explicitly by Rishonim, if I'm not mistaken, the Rosh. It didn't really work its way into halacha in terms of on the page of the Torah and Shulchan Aruch, and even the Mishnah Berurah is not going to quote it. But in this siman, we see a concept of a person has to be careful to go into Shabbos that he's not tired. Because when you're tired, that will detract from your own Shabbos. Similar to the reason that we learned in the last sim in Reish Mem Ches of the Rif and the Rambam, which was Paskin and Shulchan Aruch, which it seemed like was the main reason why it's prohibited to travel for an optional venture on a ship within 3 days of Shabbos, because you're going to get seasick, which will then cause a bittul of owning Shabbos. You're not going to be able to be involved with Shabbos properly. The pleasures of Shabbos and eating, if you're just going to be nauseous. So this is a major point when you're walking. It requires more energy and effort. And you're going to be going to Shabbos more time. And we're going to learn about this more. And we're going to even see it's brought down about exercising and doing other activities. And you should know, I learned all of this on Shavuos. This whole sif. That's when I went through all of this. Shavuos day. So second day. So when I went through this, I said I got to change it up. So that means like last Tuesday, I guess I did it. So like 6 days ago. And this Erev Shabbos, I said, you know what? I'm gonna do the lawn earlier rather than later. Because I'm tired a couple hours after I do it, and this way I could rest as opposed to just walking back then from shul and whatever and standing up a lot in shul and I did that and my Shabbos was much better. I felt like I had more energy, at least at night. So there's a concept of this, not to be tired going into Shabbos. And a person has to calculate it themselves. You could have two people that are doing the same exact activity. One gets more tired than the other. And you could have two people who are driving, and one driver is much more tired than the other. Because the other driver was manually driving 210 miles to Baltimore, while the other one was using a stay-in-lane cruise control. I would say it's around 4 times harder to drive manually than use the stay-in-lane cruise control. So you have to know what's your style, what are you doing over there, and how much will that tire you out? And that's something to contend with. That is taking the logic of this Prima Godem within the Bach and bringing it to life nowadays. That's what we're talking about over here. That's what we're dealing with. Anyways, we're going to come back to this idea. There's a gears to change over here by the Yad Avram, by the way, if you are curious, in the Magen Avram. He's the one who says Yizahir. All right, you should be careful. The Machas is a shekel over here. So it's a very interesting idea. He basically connects these two Magen Avrams. That on the one hand, he quotes the Bach and says that if you're in a wagon, so then you could even walk more than 12 miles. And on the other hand, he says most people prepare a lot of food and therefore not careful. What's the shaykhus between these two statements? How could we reconcile the juxtaposition? Why are these next to each other over here? So the Machas Shekel comes along and he says like this. It's implied that really you can't just rely on this from the fact that people have extra foods, then therefore you could travel more than 12 miles. The Magen Avram says, however, if you're sitting in a wagon, aka for sure a car nowadays, plus coupled with the fact that there's a lot of food that's being made, that's fine. Now you're good. You don't need to worry about traveling a little bit. So you have two of those factors. Number one, a lot of food. Number two, that you have the wagon, aka the vehicle. It's everything on the page of the Shulchan Aruch over here. Where to start? There's so much to learn. Hayoim Katzar Malacha Meruba. I don't know what I underlined. Let's see what the Levush over here. The Levush says if you are in an area and you're traveling before Shabbos, which is dangerous, if you remain there, you got to even go more than the 12 miles. You can't stay in that location, which is dangerous. Look at his language, though. Daigos asakana v'yitztar kol Shabbos v'lo yeh lo oneg Shabbos klal. If you're going to remain in an area that's dangerous, you're going to be constantly worried about that danger. That's going to pain you the whole Shabbos. And then you won't have a pleasurable Shabbos. That will detract from one's oneg Shabbos. So we see the concept of oneg Shabbos doesn't just apply to eating and drinking. Recent Krelitz says you get pleasure from learning Torah, it's oneg Shabbos. This is saying something deeper. If you're in an environment, you're in a place which you don't feel comfortable in, that's already not oneg Shabbos. And we're going to see and learn about very practically. If I'm not mistaken, someone is going to bring this down explicitly. It might even be based on the Levush. If a person is in a place which spiritually isn't the place he wants to be in, or it could detract from his spirituality of Shabbos, the ruchnius vibe that he's used to, that already is a considered lack of Oneg Shabbos. You're in a dangerous place. Incredibly insightful of us on Oneg Shabbos. Aruch Hashulchan comes along and he says, look, wait a second, let's just be honest over here. We're talking about Erev Shabbos. What happens Erev Shabbos? Al pi roiv ha-satan makatreg b'Erev Shabbos. You know what happens? The Satan happens. The Yetzer Hara. All of our evil inclinations know exactly how to cause arguments. That's why you have to be very, very careful with this. Your reward will be doubled from heaven. Is a cut off on the, it looks like a resh, is a dalet. Shabbos kodesh v'loy mimachaleha chas v'shalom. We should be the people who sanctify Shabbos, not desecrate it. The idea over here is that you got to be careful on Erev Shabbos. Because the Satan knows what he's doing. Kaf v'chaim. Guess I didn't go through it. Thought I did. Either I did and there was nothing worthwhile, or I didn't. Either way, comes along the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah. Which one is it? You know what? No. Let's go out of order. Comes along with Harfiness first. Harfiness first. I'm not gonna go through all of his chuvas because if I'm not this thing's broken. I'm not gonna go through all of his chuvas right now because they're long. But I want to bring out this first point which we already discussed. Yeah, we're not gonna go through how much do I have highlighted? I mean, we could, but we always do the Mishnah Berurah first. We should do Mishnah Berurah first. But I want to bring out this one point, which I think everyone will really enjoy. In his first tshuva, Kuf Zayin over here on this topic that we're dealing with, he quotes the Rosh. This is in the first parak of Shabbos, Siman Lamed Ches. Huh? Someone's here?
No.
So the Rosh over here comes along and says, Muchoch the tam ha'isr mishum dali de tiltul haderech yizbatel ma'oinig Shabbos shedamu le'isr in mafligim besvin v'erev Shabbos. The Rosh, he stellt zu. He compares our halacha to traveling in Erev Shabbos to the halacha of departing on a ship within 3 days of Shabbos. Just like we said over there that there's going to be a problem of what? Of bittul oneg Shabbos, because you're going to get seasick. So too when you travel. When a person travels a lot of times, they get nauseous. That could detract from Shabbos. Well, look, a person has to know himself. I would assume 99% of adults, when they just travel on a vehicle, they don't really get nauseous. And even if they do, they're fine within a couple of hours. We've got to figure this out.
I know they jump the gun, but I guess
Yeah.
jet lags are going to suffer.
Oh yeah, big time. We're gonna be going into planes, and we have to discuss a very relevant shaila, which I see now David's interested in.
No, jet lag's probably
How
more.
much time do
more
you need to
Nogea.
leave for in between the estimated time of arrival of your flight
Ooh.
versus the start of Shabbos?
Ooh.
If you travel on Friday.
Oh yeah.
It might be more Nogea now than traveling on a camel.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that was a horse. Thank you very much.
Horse.
Yes. No horseplay over here.
Horse and buggy.
So comes along the Rav Harfinus, and he says, no. Yesh lidchis she'ena daima mamish rak le'ikar adavar davidi takanta shelo yavu lehisbatel mo'ineg Shabbos v'hachanami chashu she'izbatel mo'ineg shel suda Shabbos shel yishalo yidais man lachinus. Really, the Rosh, this isn't the real reason over here. The real reason is they enacted make sure that you have ample time to prepare the Suda on Shabbos, that meal. Right? That's the main idea. However, he says, I found in the Halachos Van Hagos Maharash, who writes explicitly that the reason that we're concerned about this Erev Shabbos business over here is that you're going to be in pain. Because you're going to be Tirur Heiluchoi Ve'en Kanonik Shabbos, the burden of walking, of traveling, and you're not going to have Onik Shabbos.
I like walking.
However, he says the actual halacha is that most are just concerned about the reason of preparing the Suda. But it's not worthy to point out this Rosh, who is this over here? Halachos Van Hagos Maharash. And we're going to see the Binyan Sion also is going to bring this reason, which I saw quoted somewhere else. I think it was in the footnote of the Pesach Chuvas, if I'm not mistaken. They're all saying the same idea. There's a concern that you're going to be tired or you're going to get sick from the journey, and that's going to detract from your own Shabbos. You know? What did he say? Nothing.
Hmm?
Then he says, it's well known the Gemara Pesachim that we just saw, the average person can walk 40 miles in a day.
I think you could walk a lot more if you wanted to.
Well, look, David, we're talking the average person. You're above average. You don't have to make us feel bad.
3 miles an hour.
Yeah, I know, but you're above average.
3 miles an hour.
You got to do the math. If you're doing 3 miles an hour, how many hours are you walking?
I mean, I don't know how much you want to walk, I guess. Yeah, it's
I
true.
mean, let's talk. What is this? Let's talk about it. 3 times, let's say you're walking
3.5 miles an hour,
hours in a
4
day.
miles an
Guess
hour,
what?
maybe.
That's 45 miles. If you're walking 15 miles, if you're going 3 miles an hour.
You only do evenings, so you don't have
You're only
to
doing morning to evening. You're not traveling at night. They didn't have electricity back then.
take-
You're
Yeah.
not gonna walk with the candle over here.
Hmm.
So the average person could walk 40 miles a day.
Yeah.
Comes out that you're not allowed to walk more than 1/3 of the day
Well,
in order that you can reach your destination in the proper time.
well, 1/3. Wait, what?
1/3 of the day,
You can't walk more than 8 hours per day?
Erev Shabbos, right? Because if the average person could walk 40 miles and in a day,
Mhm.
and we're only allowing you to walk 10 miles, 12 miles, excuse me, 3 parseos, not 10 parseos. Comes out that you're not supposed to be traveling for more than 1/3 of the day.
Hmm.
Yep.
And we're talking about this 3 hour thing back, like you supposed to walk 3 hours till Chatzos or till Plag, like it's like you're not supposed to walk, I guess, the 3 parsos starting, let's say, 3:30 just to get to your destination when Shabbos starts.
We're going to discuss.
And why is the rounding up? Shouldn't it be 13? 13 times 3. It's 39.
You could do 13. We're approximating.
Yeah.
Every mile matters, you're right. They used to say, have one of the sections in the Sefer. Does it still apply? A penny saved, a penny earned. They're not gonna be making pennies soon.
Ah.
Yeah, absolutely. Whole discussion. Look, you got to realize like this. There's obviously a difference, and this is what he says over here on the top left. There's a difference between when Shabbos is starting at 4:20 in the afternoon, 4:15 in the afternoon, versus 8 o'clock. Right? There's a difference. Right? So you got to put that into consideration as well. Anyways, so we got more clarity today, but we still have a lot of clarity to gain. And stay patient
Okay.
because we're going to be going through it. All right? We
Go.
didn't even touch the Mishnah Berurah, but we got a lot before then.
Yeah, for sure.
Shulchan Aruch, Aruch Hashulchan,
Levush.
Levush, one true from of Harfinus, and we saw the main points in Shulchan Aruch, and we'll get some other ideas that we didn't get to yet. So we'll get to them more. So
The bath.
wait patient. We're gonna get to everything. It's only gonna take a day or two. It's not that long. It's really not that long. It's a relatively short sif. It's not that long.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll definitely be done by the end of this week. Bli neder. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Everyone have a wonderful day. Baruch Hu.
And,
All right, have a nice day.
Mm.